The ancient hotel loomed before Mihai as he stepped off the bus, its darkened windows reflecting the overcast sky. Brashov, a town steeped in history and shadow, embraced him with an unsettling chill that crept under his skin. The hotel, known as the Ospitalitate Spectrala, was a relic of a bygone era, its facade ornate yet marred by time. As Mihai approached the entrance, the heavy oak doors creaked open, revealing a dimly lit lobby that smelled faintly of dust and old wood. "Welcome to your new home away from home," a voice drawled from behind the front desk. Mihai turned to see a middle-aged woman with a weary smile, her eyes betraying a hint of wariness. "I'm Irina, the manager. You must be Mihai." "Nice to meet you," he replied, trying to mask his nervousness. As he glanced around, his gaze fell upon a large portrait hanging prominently on the wall. The founder of the hotel, a stern-looking man with a meticulously groomed mustache, seemed to watch him with disapproval. His eyes, painted with an unsettling intensity, made Mihai shudder. "Is that him?" Mihai asked, nodding towards the portrait. "Yes," Irina replied, her tone shifting slightly. "Vladislav Draculesti." He had a peculiar way of making sure his guests felt welcome. "Just be mindful of his legacy." Mihai's curiosity piqued, but before he could inquire further, Elena and Andrei entered the lobby, their voices rising in excitement. Elena, with her fiery red hair and bright smile, bounded over to Mihai. "Did you see the lobby? It's amazing. I can't believe we're finally here." Andrei, more reserved but equally intrigued, adjusted his glasses and scanned the room. "Yeah, but did you feel that? There's something off about this place." Mihai nodded, sharing Andrei's unease. "The portrait gives me the creeps. I'm not sure I like the vibe here." "Oh, come on. It's just an old hotel," Elena laughed, brushing their concerns aside. "Think of all the stories we'll gather. Let's get settled in." As they made their way to their assigned rooms, Mihai couldn't shake the feeling that the hotel was alive in some way, its very walls seemed to breathe, exhaling the weight of countless secrets. He dropped his bag on the creaky wooden floor of his room, glancing at the faded wallpaper that peeled at the edges. The atmosphere felt heavy, as if it had absorbed the emotions of every guest who had ever stayed there. Later that afternoon, while exploring the dusty archives in the hotel's basement, Elena stumbled upon an old guest ledger, its pages yellowed with age. "Mihai. Andrei. You've got to see this," she called, her voice echoing through the cavernous space. Mihai and Andrei hurried over, peering over her shoulder as she flipped through the entries. "There's something strange here," Elena said, her brow furrowing. "Look at these names. There's a pattern, every decade, a guest goes missing. It's like they just vanished into thin air." Mihai exchanged a glance with Andrei, a chill running down his spine. "Missing? You mean like, forever?" "Exactly. It's as if the hotel has a way of claiming people," Elena replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "We have to find out more." Just then, a low, unsettling whisper echoed through the hallway, causing the three to jump. Andrei's eyes widened as he glanced towards the darkened corridor. "Did you hear that?" It sounded like someone was speaking. "Probably just the wind," Mihai said, though the tremor in his voice betrayed his uncertainty. Elena shook her head, still fixated on the ledger. "No, it's more than that. We need to investigate these disappearances." Andrei, feeling a heavy weight settle in his chest, turned to the door marked "Employees Only" at the end of the hall. "What's behind there? We should check it out." "Are you sure that's a good idea?" Mihai cautioned, glancing back at the ominous portrait that seemed to loom over them, as if guarding the hotel's secrets. "Come on, what's the worst that could happen?" Andrei replied, his curiosity getting the better of him. The three friends stood at the precipice of something far darker than they could comprehend, unaware that the hotel's secrets were waiting to ensnare them, turning their first day into a journey that would challenge their very perceptions of reality. The staff break room was dimly lit, the flickering fluorescent lights struggling against the shadows that seemed to creep in from the corners. Mihai, Elena, and Andrei sat around a rickety table, the air thick with an uneasy tension. They had gathered there to discuss their first day at the historic hotel, but the atmosphere was heavy with an unspoken dread. It was then that they were interrupted by the shuffling of footsteps, and the door creaked open to reveal a grizzled old janitor. His face was worn and lined, and his eyes held a glint of something that resembled both wisdom and fear. "Ah, the fresh meat," he grumbled, leaning heavily against the doorframe. "You three should know, this hotel has its restless guests." His voice was gravelly, like stones scraping against each other. Mihai, trying to mask his rising discomfort with bravado, smirked. "Restless guests? What do you mean? Is this place haunted or something?" The janitor's gaze hardened, and he stepped into the room, the shadows swallowing him whole. "You think it's a joke? I've seen things you wouldn't believe. Never be alone here after dark." His eyes darted around the room as if expecting something to leap out from the shadows. "You hear the whispers? They're not just the wind. They're lost souls, trapped in this place." Elena, intrigued rather than scared, leaned forward. "What do you mean by lost souls? What happened to them?" The janitor sighed, rubbing the back of his neck as if trying to shake off a heavy burden. "Each of them came here with a story. Some found love, others found despair. But in the end, they all left, or didn't." He looked at them intensely. "You must take care. This hotel has a way of keeping what it wants." With that, he turned and shuffled out, leaving the trio in a heavy silence. Mihai, brushing off the warning, let out a nervous laugh. "He's just some old man trying to scare us. Right? It's just a hotel." Andrei, who had been unusually quiet, frowned. "Still, it doesn't hurt to be cautious. There's something off about this place. I felt it from the moment I stepped in." Elena, ever the curious one, couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the janitor's words. "What if there's truth to it? We should investigate. There has to be a reason for all those disappearances I found in the ledger." That night, as Mihai settled into his small room, he found sleep elusive. The silence of the hotel wrapped around him like a heavy blanket, stifling and oppressive. He rolled over, trying to find a comfortable position, when suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. His heart raced as the sound grew louder, a rhythmic thump that seemed to be heading directly for his door. He held his breath, frozen in place, as the footsteps paused just outside. "Hello?" he whispered, his voice barely above a breath. There was no response, just silence. Gathering his courage, he swung his legs over the side of the bed and stepped onto the cold floor. He crept towards the door, peering through the peephole, only to be met with darkness. There was nothing there. Shaking his head, he convinced himself it was just his imagination and returned to bed, but sleep still eluded him. Meanwhile, Elena's curiosity was piqued. Driven by a need to uncover the hotel's secrets, she found herself sneaking through the dimly lit halls, her heart pounding with both excitement and trepidation. She approached the forbidden area, the locked door that had piqued Andrei's unease earlier. The keycard she had swiped from the reception desk felt heavy in her pocket as she approached. With trembling hands, she inserted the card into the reader, holding her breath. The light turned green, and the door creaked open, revealing a darkened room filled with dust and shadows. As she stepped inside, the air grew colder, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. The walls were lined with photographs of past guests, each face frozen in time, their expressions haunting and sorrowful. Elena moved closer to one photograph, a sepia-toned image of a woman whose eyes seemed to follow her. "What happened to you?" she whispered, feeling an inexplicable connection to the sorrow in the woman's gaze. In that moment, she realized the gravity of their situation. The hotel was not just a building, it was a keeper of stories, many of them tragic. And as her heart raced with fear and exhilaration, she knew she had stumbled upon something far more sinister than she had anticipated. In the dim light of the hidden room, dust particles danced through the air like tiny ghosts, illuminated by the narrow beam of Elena's flashlight. She stood transfixed, her heart pounding in her chest as she and Andrei flipped through the brittle pages of a faded diary they had discovered tucked between a stack of photographs. Each entry seemed to breathe life into the chilling history of the hotel, revealing the story of a former employee who had vanished without a trace. "This is unreal," Andrei whispered, his voice barely above a murmur as he leaned closer to the diary. "Look at this," he writes about strange sounds in the night, shadows that don't belong to anyone. It's like he knew something was coming for him. Elena nodded, her fingers trembling as she turned the brittle pages. "And here, look at this entry. He mentions a ritual. A dark one that gives the living power at the expense of the dead." Her voice caught in her throat, the weight of the words hanging heavy in the air. Andrei swallowed hard, glancing nervously around the cramped space. "What kind of ritual? Do you think it could be related to the disappearances we found in the ledger?" Elena's eyes widened as she continued to read. "It says here that every decade, the hotel holds a ceremony to," she paused, her breath hitching as she absorbed the implications of the words. "To appease the spirits of those who died here. It sounds like they're feeding off the fear of the living." "That's insane," Andrei said, shaking his head. "You can't seriously believe this stuff. It's just an old diary, right?" But before Elena could respond, a creaking sound echoed through the room, making both of them freeze. They exchanged frantic glances, hearts racing. "Did you hear that?" Andrei asked, his voice trembling. "Yeah," Elena replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "We should." Suddenly, the door to the hidden room swung open, revealing Mihai, his face pale and drawn. "Guys, I just had the most bizarre experience." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I was wandering through the halls, and I swear I saw someone. It looked like the founder of the hotel. He was just standing there, staring at me." Elena and Andrei shared a worried glance. "What do you mean, staring at you?" Elena asked, her eyes wide with concern. "He was wearing that old-fashioned suit, the one from the portrait in the lobby," Mihai explained, his voice shaking. "And then he gestured for me to come closer. It felt like he was trying to pull me in." "Did you go to him?" Andrei asked, his brows knitted together. Mihai shook his head vigorously. "No way. I turned and ran. But it felt so real. Like he wanted something from me." He took a deep breath, trying to calm the rising panic in his chest. "I can't shake this feeling that there's something sinister about this place." "That's exactly what we're finding out," Elena said, excitement and dread mingling in her voice. She held up the diary. "This employee talks about a dark ritual and how it connects to the hotel's history. We need to figure out what it all means." Andrei's expression turned serious. "We should be careful. If this place is as haunted as the janitor warned us, we might be in over our heads." Mihai nodded in agreement, his earlier bravado fading. "We need to stick together. Whatever is happening here, I don't want to face it alone." Elena closed the diary, her mind racing with thoughts of the hotel's past. "Let's keep searching for clues. Maybe we can find out more about this ritual before it's too late." As they prepared to leave the hidden room, the air around them seemed to grow colder, a chill creeping down their spines. They exchanged uneasy glances, each of them acutely aware of the weight of the hotel's history pressing down upon them. Together, they stepped out into the dim corridor, the shadows swirling ominously around them, determined to unveil the dark secrets that lay hidden within the walls of the hotel. As the shadows lengthened and the sun dipped below the imposing mountains surrounding Brashov, Mihai, Elena, and Andrei gathered in the dimly lit break room, their eyes heavy with apprehension. The atmosphere crackled with unease, the remnants of the janitor's warning echoing in their minds. Should we really go back to him? Andrei asked, running a hand through his tousled hair, anxiety etched across his features. What if he just brushes us off again? Elena shook her head, her determination palpable. We need answers. That diary, it mentioned something dark. I can't shake the feeling that we're in over our heads. Mihai leaned against the peeling wall, the cold plaster grounding him. How do we even know he'll be there? It's like he just disappears. The memory of the janitor's sudden exit from their previous conversation gnawed at him. Just then, a chill swept through the room, making the trio shiver involuntarily. Maybe we should just forget it, Andrei suggested, his voice barely above a whisper. This place isn't normal. We're not safe here. But Elena was resolute. No. We need to confront him. We can't keep running from this. With shared trepidation, they decided to search for the janitor, traversing the labyrinthine halls of the hotel. The oppressive silence weighed heavily on them as they moved deeper into the building, their footsteps echoing ominously against the tiled floors. Look! Mihai exclaimed suddenly, pointing to a wall near the staircase. Scrawled in a hasty hand was a warning that sent chills down their spines, leave before it's too late. The letters seemed to writhe and pulse under the flickering light, as if alive. Do you think he wrote it? Elena asked, her voice trembling as she traced the uneven letters with her fingers. Andrei swallowed hard. It feels like a threat. Like the hotel is alive and wants us gone. Before they could ponder the implications, the air grew heavy, and a cacophony of screams and laughter erupted from the ballroom nearby. The sound was a jarring contrast to the eerie stillness they had just encountered. What the hell is that? Mihai said, his heart racing. It sounds like a party, but it's so wrong. Let's check it out, Elena urged, her curiosity outweighing her fear. They hurried toward the ballroom, the music growing louder, weaving through the air with an intoxicating allure. As they reached the grand doors, they found them locked tight, the ornate handles unyielding under their grasp. Panic surged within them. What's happening? We can't get in. Andrei shouted, rattling the door frantically. Maybe there's another way, Elena suggested, glancing around. We could try the side entrance. But as they turned, a sense of dread washed over them, the laughter and screams intensified, as though the ballroom was alive and taunting them. It feels like we're being trapped, Mihai murmured, his voice barely audible above the cacophony. Just then, a flicker of movement caught Elena's eye. Look! She pointed toward a shadowy corridor that led away from the ballroom. There's something down there. With little time to waste, they raced down the corridor, their hearts pounding in synchrony. The corridor twisted and turned, the walls narrowing as they ventured deeper into the hotel's belly. They stumbled upon a hidden door partially ajar, revealing a staircase that spiraled down into darkness. What if it leads to the basement? Andrei said, his voice a mix of fear and intrigue. Are we really considering this? Mihai shot back, his brow furrowed. What if it's worse down there? But Elena's eyes sparkled with a fierce curiosity. We need to know the truth. This hotel has its grip on us already. We can't turn back now. With a shared nod, they descended the staircase, the air growing colder with each step. As they reached the bottom, they found themselves in a dimly lit basement, the walls adorned with unsettling murals that depicted grotesque scenes, figures in agony, shadowy presences looming over them. Do you see this? Elena gasped, pointing to one particularly haunting mural. It seemed to show a group of people, their faces twisted in despair. But as she looked closer, her breath caught in her throat. That looks like us. What? Mihai stepped forward, squinting at the artwork. No, it can't be. But it was unmistakable, their likenesses were rendered with chilling accuracy, their expressions mirroring the horror they felt at that very moment. Andrei stepped back, his heart racing. What does this mean? Before they could grapple with the implications, the walls seemed to whisper, the air thickening with a palpable dread. They needed to escape, but the hotel had other plans. The deeper they went, the more entangled they became in its sinister web, and the realization dawned that they were not merely intruders, they were part of an unfolding nightmare. The air in the hotel felt heavier than ever, and the walls seemed to close in around Elena and Andrei as they frantically searched for Mihai. The grand, oppressive ballroom loomed ahead, its ornate double doors now ominously ajar. Shadows flickered inside, dancing to an unheard melody that sent shivers down their spines. Mihai! Elena shouted, her voice echoing against the marble walls, but only silence answered back. She exchanged a worried glance with Andrei, whose face was drawn taut with fear. "We have to find him," he urged, his voice low and urgent. He couldn't have gone far. As they stepped into the ballroom, the atmosphere thickened, enveloping them like a shroud. The grand chandelier overhead swung gently, though no breeze stirred the air. Elena's heart raced, and she felt as if 1,000 eyes were watching them, hidden in the shadows. "Look!" Andrei pointed towards the center of the room. There, standing in a trance, was Mihai, his face illuminated by a ghostly glow. Around him swirled spectral figures, their features indistinct yet hauntingly familiar. They reached out, their translucent hands beckoning him closer. "Mihai!" Elena cried out again, desperation lacing her voice. But he didn't respond, he simply stood there, entranced, as if caught in a spell. "What do we do?" Andrei whispered, fear mingling with the urgency in his tone. "We can't just leave him." Elena's resolve hardened. "We have to bring him back." With determination fueling her, she stepped forward, but Andrei grabbed her arm gently. "Be careful. We don't know what they want. Whatever it is, we can't let them take him." Elena shook off his grip and advanced, her heart pounding in her chest. The spectral figures swirled around Mihai, their whispers rising in a crescendo that filled the air with a chilling harmony. "Mihai," she called again, her voice breaking through the ethereal noise. "You have to fight it. This isn't you." For a fleeting moment, his eyes flickered with recognition, but it was quickly overshadowed by the otherworldly pull of the spirits. They moved closer, their voices now a symphony of sorrow and temptation. "Join us, dear Mihai. Find peace with us," they coaxed, their tones weaving through the air like a silken thread. "Mihai!" Andrei shouted, stepping beside Elena. "Remember who you are. This place is a trap." Suddenly, Mihai turned his head slightly, and a flicker of awareness sparked in his eyes. "Elena?" "Andrei," he murmured, as if awakening from a deep sleep. "Help me, hold on. We're coming." Elena reached out, stretching her hand toward him, her heart racing with hope. But as they moved closer, the spirits grew agitated, swirling faster, their whispers turning into a cacophony of anguish. "You cannot take him from us. He belongs to us now." "No. He's not yours." Andrei shouted defiantly. "You can't have him." Elena felt a surge of courage. "Mihai, listen to our voices. You are stronger than this." The words flowed from her heart, a plea infused with the bond they shared, and for a moment, she believed it might work. Mihai blinked, his gaze clearing as he struggled against the invisible chains binding him. "Elena. Andrei. I can't," he gasped, his voice strained. "You can. Just reach for us." Elena urged, her hand trembling as she extended it further, willing him to take it. But the spirits weren't done, they tightened their grip on Mihai, their faces contorting in rage and desperation. "He is ours," they cried in unison, their voices a chilling chorus that reverberated through the ballroom. With a sudden flash, the spectral figures lunged at Elena and Andrei, their icy presence brushing against their skin, urging them to back away. "Leave him be. You cannot save him." As Elena and Andrei recoiled, she felt a surge of panic. "We can't give up," she exclaimed, her voice breaking. "We have to find a way to break the spell." "Look." Andre pointed to the edge of the ballroom where a faint glow emanated from a large, ornate mirror framed in gold. "Maybe it's the key. Let's go." Elena shouted, determination igniting her fear. They dashed toward the mirror, leaving behind the chaos of the spectral figures as they struggled to maintain their hold on Mihai. "Mihai! Hold on!" Elena called back, her heart heavy as she glanced over her shoulder. But the moment they reached the mirror, they found themselves staring not just at their reflections but also at something deeper, an essence that transcended their fear and revealed their true selves, raw and unfiltered. "Mihai!" Andre shouted, pointing towards his friend, whose expression now mirrored their own fear and desperation. "We need to show him he can break free." Elena took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "We have to do this together. On three." "Together," Andre affirmed, nodding firmly. "Ready? 1, 2, 3. In unison, they turned back towards Mihai, their voices ringing out with an intensity fueled by their shared bond. "Mihai! You are not alone. We're here. Fight back." The ballroom crackled with energy, the spirits recoiling slightly as if the strength of their bond was a light piercing through the darkness. But would it be enough? The atmosphere in the ballroom was thick with tension, the kind that made the air feel electric and heavy at the same time. Ghostly figures swirled around Mihai, their faces pale and expressionless, yet their eyes seemed to shimmer with an unsettling depth, as if they were trying to communicate with him beyond the veil of life and death. Elena stepped forward, her heart racing but her resolve firm. "Mihai, listen to me," she shouted, her voice cutting through the whispers of the spectral assembly. "Mihai," she called again, her voice rising above the eerie soundscape. "You're not one of them. You have to fight it." Mihai's gaze flickered toward her, a moment of recognition breaking through the fog of enchantment that surrounded him. "Elena," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "Remember who you are." Elena urged, desperation lacing her words. "You're not just a guest here, you're a person. You have dreams, friends, a life waiting for you outside these walls." The spectral figures momentarily paused, their swirling forms hesitating as if her words had struck a chord. Andre, feeling a surge of determination, joined Elena, stepping beside her. "You can't let them take you, Mihai. Think of everything we've been through together. Think of our future." The moment hung in the air, charged with the struggle between the living and the dead. Mihai's expression shifted, a flicker of resistance sparking behind his eyes. The ghostly figures began to murmur among themselves, their faces contorting in confusion, as if Elena's words had momentarily broken the spell they cast over him. Then, from the corner of the dimly lit ballroom, Andre noticed something glimmering, a mirror, intricately framed and hidden behind a tattered curtain. "The mirror," he exclaimed, rushing towards it. "It might show us the truth." He tugged the curtain aside, revealing the polished surface that reflected not the chaos around them but their own frightened faces. But as Andre peered deeper, he saw something else. The mirror reflected their true selves, not the terrified expressions they wore, but their inner strength, their hopes, and their profound connection. "Look!" Andre shouted, beckoning Elena and Mihai to join him. "This isn't just a reflection, it's us. It's who we really are." Mihai's attention shifted entirely, drawn to the mirror's shimmering surface. The figures around him began to wail, their faces contorting in anguish as the light from the mirror grew brighter. "No," one of the spirits cried, its voice a chilling echo. "You must stay." Elena seized the opportunity, stepping closer to the mirror with Andre. "Mihai, look at us. We're here, together. You're not alone." As they joined hands, a surge of warmth filled the air. The mirror pulsed with energy, illuminating the room with a brilliant light that pushed back the encroaching shadows. The ghostly figures recoiled, their forms wavering like smoke in the wind, as if the mirror's light was a barrier they could not cross. With a sudden burst of courage, André stepped forward, raising his fist. "We won't be part of your twisted game." He struck the mirror with all his might. The glass shattered into thousands of glimmering shards, each piece reflecting the terrified faces of the spirits, causing them to shriek in unison. As the mirror shattered, the ballroom erupted into chaos. The walls trembled, and the very foundation of the hotel began to groan under the weight of its dark history. The spectral figures writhed and twisted, their forms dissipating like mist in the morning sun. "Run!" Elena yelled, grabbing Mihai's hand. They sprinted toward the exit, the air thick with the echoes of the past battling against their desperate bid for freedom. But as they reached the door, they found the grizzled janitor standing there, his expression solemn yet resolute. "This way," he gestured, leading them down a narrow corridor that had appeared from the shadows. "I was waiting for you. You're the ones who can finally break the curse." As they fled, the janitor turned to them, revealing a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "I was the last to escape, but you have the power to free us all." With the hotel crumbling around them, they followed the janitor into the depths of the building, each step taking them closer to freedom and away from the clutches of the past.